The spiritual gift of self-control. Uh, I've been, this is something I've been growing in, and I found incredibly helpful, especially when Sandy and I were really trying to figure out how we were going to be married. And I started to realize, oh, I can own more of this, of us doing well. I can own more of it than I thought I could. And I can impact the context of our disagreements or of the environment of our home. I have significant power over it. In fact, more power than I thought I could. And where that starts is in self-control. So it's been an incredibly empowering thing for me to be growing in, whatever you want to call it, emotional regulation. I call it self-control because I think that's what it is. I think it's a gift of it's a fruit of the spirit. All right, skills that we're building, as you'll remember. Active listening, understanding conflict, whatever. I'm not going to read them. The next one is self-control. So that's where we're going. And again, like I said in the email, this is the first defensive skill. Everything else has been aimed toward kind of building something. Now we're going to be. This asks, how do we keep specific enemies who would tear down what we've built or are building at bay? I've come to very much appreciate the idea of self-control. It is, in some sense, I feel like it's almost the forgotten stepchild of the fruits of the spirit, of the fruit of the spirit, as my father-in-law, who is in town today, reminded me, the fruit singular of the spirit. But I have found it to be something of almost a superpower. Just like any of these of the fruit of the spirit, if you really grab onto them and take them seriously, any of it could kind of completely transform your life. But again, for our purposes, this quote really sticks out to me. It's much easier to destroy than create. We are trying to get ourselves out of our own way so that we can continue to build the things that we can build. You've heard before that every negative interaction in a relationship, if you put it on a scale, it weighs something like 10 times the amount of every positive interaction. So for every 10 positive interactions equals one negative interaction. Well, that becomes very difficult if there's 5 and 5, then you're not having a great week. You're not having a great hour, Right. So this idea of self-control, it becomes very important in actually progressing the sense of safety that we have with each other, because we're able to bring the number of negative interactions much lower so that we can actually kind of, gain momentum if we want to be mathematical about it. Two realities that I just want to hang out on for a minute. What the thing that makes self-control hard, this isn't everything that you could say about it, but my sort of twist on this is this: what makes self-control hard spiritually is there a threat to my abundant life? And if there is, then I need to take action. And often that action that we take is those more instinctual actions, the faithless kind of actions, the unthinking action, bred out of fear or out of kind of unbridled desire, those kind of things. But it comes from I want this, and so I'll grab it. We're not in control. We are being controlled by our fears or by our desires. I was just thinking about this the other day, where something about I'm not going to remember the exact situation, but it was a parenting situation where I could feel myself, like the tension just rose and rose and rose and rose and rose. And what I was, it felt like, the Silas in this case was taking this calm, like peaceful, ordered life from me. And that it felt like a threat that I had, that sort of had to be responded to. Whenever you put it that way, that's ridiculous, because order and peace is a part of the abundant life that I have in Christ. And he's one. He can't even tie his shoes. He's not going to assault my abundant life. Why am I reacting so in such a kind of a big way? Why am I feeling so much tension? But there's that threat there. Now, parenting is hard. And that's not to negate that fact. It's just to say, whenever we put it in those kind of terms, it's like, okay, let's get some perspective on what is actually happening here. Never mind the second point there. What do you think about that? This idea that, is there a threat on my abundant life, and reacting, that's part of what makes self-control hard. Do you connect with that? What about that? Do you connect with, what about?
So it sounds very relatable to me. So the first thing I thought of when you said that was this book that we're listening to called Habits of the Household, and there's a segment, or there's a anecdote that the author reads. So he's got four kids. I can't remember. Doesn't matter. But there was one instance where he's talking about how like one of his youngest like socks him in the face,
Mm-hmm.
and he's like talking about like how do you react in that moment. He's like, it's all well and good to say, like, after a long day, no one's obeying you, you're doing everything you can. Like, he sets the stage very well of like the circumstances aren't in your favor, and then at some point something gets you to the point where like you're like, this is an immediate threat to my existence and how I feel right now. And then like you explain, somehow you give that right explanation, and then, or description of like, this is not right, or this is not the way you treat people, or whatever. And then he hauls up and socks you again. And it's just like, it reminded me of that sort of anecdote of like, yeah, like when you're pushed to where you feel like you're really threatened, it's like that gets you out of your, you sort of fly off the handle, so to speak. So I can understand that.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Yeah, and I think that's helpful, because I think what I'm describing here is the objective reality of that situation, which what we're trying to do is, subjectively, what we're trying to do is grab for the objective reality of, there is no threat to my abundant life right now. And we're trying to do that better and better in the moment, so that our fuse gets longer, or our ability to practice self-control and to maintain perspective on the objective truth that we already know is true, to extend the period of time or stress that we can handle while maintaining that perspective, right?
Yeah.
So that's the process of growth in front of us. So the physical side of this is this, I mean, you guys have heard of the fight, flight, and freeze response. That is a neurological, like a very documented neurological reality, where our brain assesses essentially exactly the question, is there a threat that I need to respond to? depending on the person and their background or like a couple few factors, the brain will determine, am I going to fight, am I going to flight, am I going to freeze in this. But that's a physical reality. Now, what part of what a lot of where this idea of self-control starts for me is trying to learn to interact with that fight, flight, and freeze response physically to create, I don't know exactly what to call it, but sort of create space so that spiritually you can actually reason, right? You can actually make a choice. Because what happens in fight, flight, and freeze is there's a portion of your brain that controls this basic survival instincts. And whereas the complex thinking, the abstract part of your the part of your brain that controls abstract thinking, this is, by the way, this is your brain. Like, this is your brain stem. This is the reptilian part of your brain. This is the bigger more part of your brain that does like complex thinking. So this is like a model of your brain right here. That's why I'm doing this. When this part of your brain, the part that's associated with survival, when it activates in the fight, flight, and freeze phase, it actually draws blood away from the critical thinking, complex thinking, and abstract thought part of your brain. So literally, blood goes from the part of your brain that will help you think your way through something to the part of your brain that will just make you react out of, there's a threat, do something. So physically, it is hard to have and maintain self-control on a neurological level. But part of what we can do is notice and interact with our body in ways that can basically direct this part of your brain to say, okay, stop being the blood hog, send it back to the rest of us, because we need to be our fully thoughtful, choice-oriented beings that God made us. This I probably should have mentioned earlier. This is one of those helpful perspectives to maintaining, or this is one of the things that has helped me always maintain perspective. I tried to source this quote, and I couldn't actually find the source of it. I definitely didn't make it up, but I don't know who said it. So anyway, for the Christian, 3 things are true. Whatever is bad cannot last. Whatever is good cannot be taken from you. And the best things are yet to come. Just helps me maintain that perspective that we were thinking about, right? Whenever Silas was being a baby and I felt like he was threatening my life, it was helpful to kind of back off and like, okay, there are certain things that are true, right? And whatever is bad about this cannot last, and the best things are yet to come, right? So that's a bit of a tangent. But the easiest way to start improving self-control is body awareness and mind-muscle connection. We took a birthing class, that ended up emphasizing that fairly heavily, but it's all based on finding tension in your body and growing in your ability to let go of it. And there's apparently, I haven't again sourced this information directly, but what they said in the class is that there's actually a lot of pain relief that can come through this progressive relaxation and body awareness, right? If women can give birth through body awareness and relaxing, not that all women do, but if it's helpful in birthing in any sense, it can probably help me as I'm trying to like buckle the straps on my 1-year-old's stuff, right?
Right. Yeah.
That's the metaphor I'm going for.
Gotcha.
How do you do it? So there's a couple of ways to start progressing in this. Ultimately, where we want to go is if you're feeling tension building in your muscles and in your body somewhere, that you would be able to mentally take control of that area of your body, mentally, purposefully, consciously relax it. What that does is it will send signals to that reptilian brain to say, oh, no reason to be tense. There's no threat here. There is no threat here. And you can then think. And I will tell you, this sounds crazy, but I have experienced this working in some kind of amazing ways. I don't know if you've ever gotten like so mad that at this thing that you're doing. Like I remember standing in the kitchen in Alexandria and I was trying to fix a cupboard door or something like that, and it wasn't working. I was just getting more and more tense, more and more upset, and I just could not think of what the problem was or what to do. And I was just running around in circles. I just wanted to hit the thing. Whenever I was able to like find the tension in my shoulders and in my back and relax it and just kind of take a walk around the kitchen, sit down and actually look at it, my blood went from the back of my head into the thinking part of my head. I was like, oh, I can just do this. And I was almost instant. And that kind of stuff has happened more and more throughout the years, because I'm actually able to use the thinking part of my brain. So I love this stuff. I believe in it. The easiest ways to start with it are using your jaw. So whenever you so everybody carries tension and in their body in different areas. I carry it a lot in my neck, in my shoulders. I think that's pretty common. Another common place is in your jaw. So whenever muscles start, or whenever tensions start getting high, emotions start getting high, you'll sense this, or you will hope, the idea is that you will learn to kind of sense this tension building in your jaw. I think it's an easy way to start, because whether or not you sense the tension there, what you can do is, and this is straight out of the birthing class, you can kind of do like horse lips is what it was called in the birthing class. But basically just like, it's impossible to have a tense jaw doing that. Like if I'm clenching my teeth, that's what it sounds like. You have to have your lips loose and your jaw lax in order to do that. You can breathe, like you've heard of relaxation breaths or whatever. You can clench your jaw and breathe, you're still carrying tension. And the breathing isn't helping you relax. There's nothing special about the breathing. It's the relaxation that we're after, right? So the action of kind of doing the horse lips helps you learn the difference between, okay, I did have a tense jaw. I can tell that it's different now. I can tell that it was tense and it's not as tense now. So that's a helpful way to kind of start learning what that feels like. We need to learn what it feels like because often we're just not, we don't think about this kind of stuff, and we go around day to day, just our brain doesn't kind of filters out stuff that we don't need, and that typically the tension that we just unconsciously carry in our body, we don't need it, except for the fact that when it builds, it can take us down places that we don't want to go, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a place to start. What I typically will have people do from there is kind of start paying attention to the ways that where, oh, I am tense in this or that area of my body, and I didn't even realize it before. So a good one, if you're, whatever you're doing, if you're kind of scrolling on your phone or you're reading a book or whatever, you can try and quick do like a kind of a body scan where you just try and relax various parts of your body, and you'll realize, oh, I had tension there because I can relax, like I relaxed it, so there was tension there. And as you practice that, you'll get better and better at going from tense to kind of completely relaxed. Now, again, this is not a means, and this is not an end in and of itself. We're telling our body and our brain there is no threat here. Ultimately, because by faith we know there is no threat to our abundant life in Christ. There literally nothing in the world can threaten it. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to use those truths by faith to interact with our body to say, there is no threat here. Lord, help me to have control, have self-control, and to respond faithfully in this situation. Okay, so I said a lot there. Let me go back to improving the kind of the ideas that I threw out about improving body awareness and mind muscle connection. So what do you think about that? It sounds kind of weird.
I have a lot of things to say about it. It's quite providential that you mentioned, or that we're talking about it today. I'll talk about that in a moment. But what's interesting to me is that there's this instinct of, like, when you're in the fight, flight, or what is it? Fight, flight, or freeze. How that takes over and takes precedence. And so what you're talking about is like the awareness, like having enough blood flow in the other part of the brain to be able to be aware of, like, that you're in that state, pausing, distancing yourself from it, and then being like, all right, I'm in that state, but that's not controlling me. Because it almost seems like that flight, fright, or freeze is like the impression or the instinction is like that controls you if you just let it, essentially.
It makes things a lot harder.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
I would say, and the reason I mention that is because, like, today, perfect example. This morning, I flew off the handle. Crazier than I think I've done in a very long time. maybe that might sound dramatic, but it was very intense for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew something was going on before I took the kids to daycare, and then it just sort of it cascaded, and like I
Mm-hmm.
flew off the handle.
Yeah.
And I think at that point, I'm trying to like look back at those moments and see if like I could have even cognitively been aware of what my body was doing. I noticed later on, like after I'd flown off the handle, that my adrenaline was like really flowing, and that like my body
Mm-hmm.
was not in a state of like I was not in a good spot.
Yeah.
But I'm curious now, like how easily I would have been able to earlier on recognize that I was getting to that point. Um, so it's interesting to know that like there's practice involved, but it's a little
Mm-hmm.
it's a little scary to me to think that I could actually be able to do it.
Well, I think the birthing class is like a really good maybe analogy for it because it's like you do practice that before you go into birth because it's
Yeah.
super hard to do once you're like I do remember from those books where they're like, oh, you got to practice like relax your pinky, like you have to do like all of it. And if
Mm-hmm.
you're having like a level 8 contraction and they're like relax your pinky, you're going to be like get out of here.
Pow, right in the kisser.
No,
Yeah,
we're not
yeah.
doing that. So
Yeah.
like saying it's a skill to practice
Yes.
and
Yes.
hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah.
And it is a skill, and it will take time. I mean, full disclosure, I think I really got to where I felt really confident in kind of controlling my anger. It took me at least 2 years, I think, to like really feel confident in it. Now, I felt progress all along the way. But it took practice, no doubt about it, and kind of a commitment to I'm going to figure this out. I don't want to be controlled by my environment. The good thing, God is very gracious, and life is just full of times to practice. So that's the good news, I guess. Yeah. Did you have
The
something?
only thing I had to add it's not really even that helpful. It's just like a tangent. Is that I learned in Pilates that they always said don't hold your breath while you're exercising because holding your breath initiates the fight, flight, or flee response, which makes exercising so much harder if you're like, I'm in pain, I'm in pain, I'm in pain, because you're holding your breath, it's making you panic. Like you can't do anything. So I know breathing's like not, but like it probably helps with the like horse lips and stuff. It's like you're forcing yourself to just like not hold your breath.
Yeah.
Like that's a science thing too. Like that it just makes it worse.
Yeah.
And it's hard not to do that when you're like stressed. You're like, what's gonna happen?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, another good way of getting started at this that I forgot to mention is, and I think actually has a lot of carryover between marital conflict, actually, is stretching. Getting to a place where it kind of hurts, right? Not that you're causing yourself injury, but getting to a place where I am choosing to stretch and then stay there where it's really uncomfortable, but I am mentally relaxing into that uncomfortable muscle right now. I find that really helps form the mentality of I need to walk into marriage conflict, and I need to bring my abundant life with me and the peace of Christ with me. I find that was just a really helpful, like, transferable skill, if you will. That's another good way to, I think, start it, if you like. because it's really easy, right? Like it's really easy to fight. Like let's say you're just doing a hamstring stretch, right? Super easy for the rest of your body to be like tense and fighting against that stretch. If you can relax into that stretch, then I think that helps. Yeah, like I mean, just like I said, that's what we're going for, right? That's kind of a metaphor for I'm walking into this storm, but I'm head up, I'm choosing it, and there's no threat here. This is a very individual, kind of an individual. Ultimately, it's just like, hey, practice. The project would be, yeah, start really trying to be aware. And I appreciate the story that you shared, Tom, because you knew something was going on. Like you could feel it building.
Yeah, totally.
Even if you didn't necessarily like know what it was or know what to do about it or something like that.
I literally said the words, something is wrong, but I don't know what it is.
Right. And you couldn't even figure out what it is because you couldn't think. Like,
yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
At very least, it would have been hard to figure out what it was.
Yes. Yeah.
That's the kind of, so what I would do with that and what I've kind of had to learn to do with it is like my default is, okay, I gotta relax. I have to have self-control and be in command of the tension that is building in my body. And then I need to figure out what's going on. That's kind of my default.
Okay.
And so I will like, okay, look, I gotta drop my shoulders. I have to, I do some weird stuff, not gonna lie. I mean, it probably looks ridiculous and I'm just unashamed because I would rather have self-control than to have someone else not think that I look ridiculous.
Well, so one of the things I like about what you just said is like, you're trying to figure out like, where's the tension first, which is like cognitively, that's like a simpler task than like what is going wrong in my sphere, like my world right now, right? Like, that can be a complicated thing to figure out.
Yeah.
And if you are in the fight or flight, freeze response, you're like, you aren't equipped to do that.
Yeah.
So like first thing, like let's get out of that phase by just at least trying to be aware. Like the simpler task is like, how do you feel?
It takes you off the anger track too. Like you might be on like highway to hell, like
it's a
pedal to the metal. Like this at least makes you take a detour and be like, all right, are we still going there? Like what's you know?
Yeah.
Right.
Totally. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Be using the try using the jaw thing whenever you feel that tension building, but then also just kind of like pay attention to where you're carrying tension in your body and be actively trying to control that tension when you find it. And kind of what I mean by control is just letting it go, basically relaxing that part of your body.